Well, good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is a Wednesday, I think it is, September the 18th, 2024. I'm not quite exactly sure. You sort of lose track of the days when you've been travelling, but it's great to be back home in Australia. I got home yesterday afternoon, and it's good to be back out in the Aussie fresh air. I love going to America. It's a brilliant place. I love everything about it, but geez, it's good to be home and to sleep in your own bed. And actually the first thing I look forward to when I got to, touch down in Australia was an Aussie coffee. Now again, I love America. I love our American friends over there, but guys, you need to learn how to make a coffee. And I don't think I've ever had a half decent coffee there, and I don't want to bag out the Americans. They do everything very well over there, but geez, as soon as I arrived or touched down in Sydney, I headed straight to one of the, what looked like a good little cafe there, and got myself a flat white. Now I know that's not the most adventurous coffee, but I tell you, after drinking that stuff they call coffee over there, it's good to be back home. Look, I know I've gone over a lot of my trip in my videos and my reviews. I actually hope you liked the videos. It was a bit of fun, and look, it's always a little bit of an effort, I suppose. You're always got to whack the camera out and try and film as much as you can, and the commentary. And you get a few weird looks when you do it, but I've sort of gotten past that now. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I have a little bit of fun with it. I try and storyboard it a little bit so that you can sort of see what I do during, and not only the day by day, but even just a trip, what you go through at the airports and all that sort of stuff. And speaking of airports, I've got to say, geez, Sydney airport, I haven't been there for a while. I thought Melbourne was bad, but geez, Sydney, come on, you've got to lift your game a little bit. Look, I wasn't happy about going through Sydney, by the way, but I couldn't get a direct flight to Melbourne. But I thought, it's only an hour flight, whatever, I can do it. But we got off the plane, and there were people just like, and you get that, a lot of planes land early, but the one thing I've always disliked about the Sydney airport, for starters, is the fact that it's not all linked. The international and domestic parts are not linked, and that's one good thing about Melbourne. You arrive whether it's international or domestic, and you can just walk between the two, and it's really good. Having said that, when you get off the plane in Melbourne internationally, it's absolute pandemonium as far as trying to get through customs and get your little tickets and all that sort of stuff, and it's actually ridiculous how unorganised it is. It's probably I thought it was the most unorganised airport that I've ever been to be honest, the Melbourne airport. And I distinctly actually remember, now I know this is walking boxing, but I haven't really been on top of all things boxing while I've been away, so you're going to have to hear a little bit more about my trip. But I remember when I arrived in Melbourne a while back, one of the trips, and a lot of people getting off the planes who couldn't speak English, or who just never been there before, or whatever it might be. And we had this rude prick, what do you call him, a guard or officer or whatever the hell you want to call him, and he was just yelling at the passengers getting off. Now, if you've been international from overseas into Melbourne, you'll probably get what I'm saying as far as being unorganised. You don't really know where to go or where to go. Like, it's when you get to LA, for example, there's always people ushering you in the right direction, and that's saying something when I'm complimenting LA airport, I can tell you, because that's probably the worst airport just as far as the airport itself goes. But at least they're organised when you arrive, and it's actually quite easy to get through. Yeah, there's some lines, but it's quite easy. But when you get to Australia or Melbourne, there's just lines going everywhere, and this rude prick was just yelling at people who had no idea that they just arrived from overseas. It's not their fault they don't know where to go. But anyway, I thought Sydney might be a little bit better, and I got there and there were just people everywhere. It was just total chaos. And I was told to get in some line. I walk in there, all of a sudden there's this little, Middle Eastern woman who could not understand a word she was saying, and she's just barking. All she was saying was move, 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 move. So everyone's just sort of moving, and then out of the blue she cuts us off. She puts one of the little elastic sort of herd sort of things they do, the lane things, and she just put one in front of us and stopped us in our tracks and just said, move, 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 and we literally had nowhere to go. And I couldn't help myself. I said, well, where the hell do you expect me to go? Because I was at the front of all this, by the way, and ended up just having to go under the barrier, and I just found my own way out. But that was not a great way to land. And then trying to get to the buses and the ferry across, and the bus was absolutely packed. I know I'm having a bit of a whinge here. I know I'm very privileged to be able to go overseas, but yeah, it was just, yeah, it was not the greatest way to be welcomed back into Australia. But yep, getting on the plane. And look, the other thing I will say too, I've been actually quite critical of Qantas over the journey with everything, but they were actually really good on both journeys over and back, and they have left a lot to be desired in the past, but yeah, they were quite good, and the staff were fantastic, and all the flights are on time and all that sort of stuff, which obviously helps as well. So, but that was the journey over and back. But just over there, of course, I was there for the Canelo Alvarez fight. I won't go over all the other stuff that I did, because you've obviously seen, or hopefully seen, all the videos. If you haven't, make sure you go back on this page. Is 12 different episodes. So yeah, it was awesome. But just onto the boxing side of things, again, I've done a review and all this sort of stuff. I know I'm probably going over old things here, but look, I was really impressed with Canelo. I thought that he probably looked the best that I've seen him for quite a few fights, and I think that I was having a little bit of a think why, and I think one is that Belunga really got under his goat. I think he really got Canelo up for the fight. And it was interesting after the fight to think that how complimentary Belunga was of Canelo, because in the lead up he was anything but. But I think the main thing that got Canelo up for the fight, apart from wanting to probably take Belunga's head off, is that Belunga, apart from a few instances, actually engaged Canelo, actually punched with Canelo. If you see a lot of the common denominators in a lot of Canelo's fights, he's allowed to dictate the fight from start to finish. The only one that didn't allow him to do that was probably Bivol, of course, who beat him over 12 rounds quite comprehensively. But I thought that Belunga actually punched with him, and probably, I know it's a stupid thing to say, but tried to win the fight. You get a lot of the opponents of Canelo, and and it's not just Canelo. I remember back in the day, guys like Mayweather and these types of guys, they get in there and they almost realise they're the opponent and fight accordingly. And I just thought that a lot of Canelo's previous opponents have just, they'll just go through the motions and they'll fight. They'll fight according to the way he fights, to his pace, and I just thought that Belunga actually dug down a few times and actually had a bit of a crack, especially when he got knocked down. I mean, that left hook in the third round was an absolute peach of a punch. But I was really impressed. Well, I was a little bit concerned at the start that Belunga might get himself knocked out by trying to punch on or punch back with Canelo when he was obviously a little bit stunned. But I was really impressed with the way he dug in, and he had his moments later in the fight. And look, Canelo obviously won very clearly, but I was just impressed with the way Belunga really dug in and had a crack. And I think that's why Canelo actually looked a lot better, because he had a guy in front of him who wasn't moving away, wasn't trying to negate him. He was actually trying to fight him, and that's where we saw sort of vintage Canelo. And I was really impressed with his work rate. I was impressed with his volume of punches. I was impressed with the power punch he was throwing. I was also impressed with his speed. Now, I don't know whether I was just seeing things, but his last fights, the other ones with Charlo and Munguia, I mean, he actually looked pretty good against Munguia, I think, but a few of the fights before that, he just looked like he was a little bit disinterested, and it's actually good to see Canelo back in that mindset. And the only problem is we have now is that, who does he fight? Because there's not really that many fighters around. I know we're talking about Crawford, we're maybe talking about Benavidez. I'm just going to get him here because he's trying to take the long route. I wish I could sort of show you this. He's just decided to lie down in protest. Apparently he was a good boy when I was away too, by the way. My wife took him for walks and he was okay, but he saves his stubbornness for me because he knows I'm a bit of a sucker. Come across here, buddy. Come across. But yeah, so who does Canelo fight next? Well, I've still got an inkling that it might be Crawford, and the only reason I say that is because there's really literally no one else for him to fight. If he's made it quite clear that it's not going to be Benavidez, then who's it going to be? I don't see who else he can fight. I'm getting a little bit of resistance here from this little fella. This way, buddy. There's a good fella. So yeah, I don't think he'll fight Plant again. I thought he dominated Plant the first time and actually stopped or knocked out Plant. So I don't see that fight happening again. Belunga afterwards was talking about a rematch. That doesn't happen. I don't think the fight really... I think a lot of people enjoyed the fight, but I don't think anyone afterwards was saying, geez, I'd love to see a rematch of that. So I don't think that happens. If anything, I would probably like to see of his opponents, I would probably like to see Belunga maybe fight Plant. I think that'd be a really good fight. So there's probably more activity underneath Canelo than at the top, because he's literally just beaten everyone except Benavidez. And I know I've said it before, but I'm not that excited about the Benavidez fight. If I'm being completely honest, I would actually really like to see Crawford over Benavidez. I know that goes against the grain of probably most boxing fans out there, but I'm just not a big rapper Benavidez. I don't know why. I just never have been. I just think Canelo wins that fight quite clearly. Yeah, be entertaining, but I just don't like the fact that, and probably just a personal thing, I just don't like the way that I was going to say Belunga, that Benavidez, he's always been that big weight bully. You know, and he's always had his issues with, you know, with weight, and he's had a few dramas outside the ring, and I don't know, I just don't like his attitude. I know that's not the right example of this way, buddy, this way, man. I know that's not the right criteria to say whether a fighter deserves a fight or not, but I'm just not that excited by that fight. But Crawford's just one of those special once in a generation type of fighters, and if anyone can go up and do some damage, it's Terence Crawford. And I know he didn't look great in his last fight, I get that, but sometimes these fighters need that challenge, and I just had a feeling that Crawford was just sort of talked into the Madrimov fight. Well, not talked into it because he wanted a belt, but almost say, look, just get past Madrimov and then we'll get you Canelo. I reckon that's what was sort of told to him, and I just thought he fought accordingly, and he hadn't fought for over a year, and I just thought he went through the motions a little bit, and you know, it was arguable that maybe Madrimov might have even won that fight. I don't think so, but yeah, I just think Crawford, if he got that Canelo fight, I think he would do pretty well. The only issue for me is how he carries the weight, and he did look a little bit slow and lethargic against Madrimov at 154. So how's he going to go at 168? So that's probably the biggest issue for me. But look, he doesn't have to weigh 168. He could weigh maybe 162. He's only got to be over the middleweight limit. So if he weighed maybe 162, maybe he'd retain a little bit of his speed and movement. But look, I'm being honest again, that's the only fight I can sort of see for Canelo at the moment. So unless he goes back up, I think he should stay right away from the light heavyweights. I don't think that there's any need whatsoever to fight Beterbiev or Bivol or these types of guys. I just don't think it makes sense. I just don't think it does. I think if anything at Canelo's stage of his career, that just maybe fight Crawford, maybe look if Janabek moves up, and just stay with those types of guys, because I just think we saw what Bivol did to him. I shudder to think what someone like Beterbiev would do, who's a big, strong, hard, light heavyweight, who's not going to try and outbox Canelo. He's going to try and take him out. So that's probably why I think he should stay away from him. And he's obviously shown he doesn't really want to fight Benavidez. Morale, I don't think has deserved it just yet. So there's a bit going on there, but yeah, it's interesting times coming up. Just at the fight itself, actually, it was pretty funny. I'm not sure I said this in the videos, but just the fans that you get there. And I actually sat next to these two guys at the fight, and they were really good guys. They came down and were chatting away, and it was all good. And they were there for, I don't know, an hour and a half or whatever it might have been, and we're talking boxing, and really good Mexican fans, and they were there for the weekend. Not real like rusted on boxing fans. They didn't really know too much about the undercard or anything, but they were good. And then about halfway through the Canelo fight, a guy and his missus came down and said, "Excuse me, guys, you're in our seats." So these guys had pretty much sat there the whole night, in good seats, by the way. And I looked at back, and they were going right up into the bleachers. So they'd done well for half the card to have really good seats. But isn't it funny though? This is again that type of fan. They're obviously in Vegas and say, oh, let's go to the fights. They get there halfway through the main event, if you can believe that. And the tickets, while they weren't the best, they were still quite expensive. So I just couldn't believe it. I just shook my head thinking, what are you doing? You've just paid really good money to come halfway through the fight, but that's what you get. But I had to have a laugh at these two guys. Kudos to them. They'd obviously bought the seats right up the back and made their way, a fair way down. So, but yeah, just the sights you see. What I really love too, and I know I mentioned the Mexican fans in the videos, but when you go to like, say here in Australia, you go to let's just say it's a Tim Tszyu fight or a George Kambosos fight or whatever it might be. You get, there's obviously a shitload of fans there go, but I would say, what is it, 90% men? I'm thinking 90% of, the fight fans, and then you've got probably, we call them the footy fans who, they're sort of, they're not real boxing fans, but they go because it's, the boys are going, come, we'll make a day of it, we'll have a few beers. That's sort of the footy crowd I sort of refer to. But when you go over there and you see like a Canelo fight, there is literally, I'm thinking, a 60-40 split. 60 men, 40 women, and probably that 40% would include kids. So many kids, and so you expect the men, I get that, but what blows me away is that so many women and children, more importantly, all with their Canelo headbands, their Canelo t-shirts. A lot of them, they had boxing gloves on and they had signatures all over it, and they absolutely love him. And that's just the difference to me over there. Boxing is to a lot of the Mexicans, not just Mexicans, but Americans, but mainly those Mexican fans, where it is a mainstream sport to them. This is not just, your hardcore boxing fans with, the casuals mixed in. These are boxing fanatics. And you can see that how much, Canelo means to them. But when you've got, so many women and children all chanting Canelo, Canelo, and just infatuated with him. And that's just a difference that I see in the fan bases. And while we have so many different sports here to get our heads around, the Mexican scene, it's either soccer or boxing over there. So, but look, I had a great time. The card itself was just okay. I actually saw Danny Garcia at the airport the next day, and I was tempted to get a photo, but he didn't look like he was in any mood to talk with the public. He had his hoodie on and his sunglasses and his team around him. He didn't really look like he was in the mood for fan engagement. So I just he's actually in front of me at the line, in the line at Cinnabon. My favourite hangout over there, the Cinnabon. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about, the Cinnabon rolls. But yeah, so he's in there getting one of them with his family before making the trip home, and whether we see him again, I suppose remains to be seen. But overall, look, I had a ball. Like I said, the first thing I was looking forward to was a coffee and everything, and today it's just taking little Neil here for a walk in the nice fresh Aussie air. And look, I haven't really been across all the boxing stuff. I know there's been the Premier Boxing Series. I think we've had the Dan Hill one. I think there's another one this week on Thursday with Will Tomlinson and Wildfighter. I missed the Alex Winwood fight. I had to watch that on replay. That was a little bit disappointing, but geez, what a performance that he put in, and I'm sure he'll be back. He's had 5 fights now, so I'm sure Alex will be back amongst it pretty soon. When you talk about daring to be great, well, he didn't just pick off any champion, he picked off the champion, so congratulations to Alex. And so everything else I'll have to catch up with now. It's interesting that even though I was over there amongst it for 2 weeks, I was really just concentrating on what I was doing on a daily basis rather than sitting on the internet looking at sites and everything, all the other news going on. So that's about it for my first episode back, guys. I'm sure once I get across everything, I'll be able to have a lot more to talk about. So much going on. Of course, it's fight week with Joshua and Dubois, so we'll talk a little bit more about that in some episodes coming up. But have a great day. It's beautiful here in Mount Macedon, and it's a little bit better than being in the 40-degree heat over in Vegas anyway. So have a great day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.